right. Are we all roughly back? I think we all are. It's good. Just want to say, it's really good actually to see many familiar faces around. Nikos Damidis, I'm the head of policy and impacts at National Highways. Let's see if this works. Oh. And yeah, and we'll have 4 really good presentations today. Basically, we have TfL, we have 2 from TfL, 1 from RSSB, and yeah, it is going to be a really interesting second half of the day. At the end of those 4 presentations, we will be asking lots of questions about what that means for us in terms of what the safe system means, the implementation, and ultimately what are the good practices out there. And I would like to invite everyone who is in this second part to come on the stage. So, shall we? So, David? Hello, hello, hello. And I'll try to not go too far. And I think, Scott, you're first.
Which is handy.
Indeed.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Scott Wilding. I'm from the freight team at TfL. This is my colleague Joseph Duggan, and we are the team that are working on Direct Vision Standard at TfL. So we're going to take you through a presentation about some of the successes that we've had with DVS, but also where we're going in the future because we are tightening the standard. So firstly, it's important to say the Mayor has committed to a vision where no one is killed or seriously injured on our road network by 2041. That is a key policy that's underlining everything that we do, and part of that is Direct Vision Standard, which applies to those vehicles which are 12 tonnes or above. Now, the scheme requires all 12 tonnes or above HGVs to have a HGV safety permit when entering London. But at the moment, the minimum requirement is a 1-star. That means they have to, if they're below that, if they're 0-star, they have to have extra safety equipment fitted to the vehicle that helps the driver detect vulnerable road users like people who walk and cycle. And we are tightening that, or the Mayor's decided that we would tighten that from October of this year, so that minimum standard raises from 1-star to 3-star. So that means if you've got a 0, 1 or 2-starred vehicle, you'll have to fit what we are calling the progressive safe system to a vehicle. So briefly, the Direct Vision Standard is all about how much direct vision the driver can see from his or her cab window. It's not necessarily about fitting things to the vehicle to improve, to make it easy to see out of the cab window itself. So that's the principle of it. How much can you see from the cab window? And the safe system as it is at the moment, the progressive safe system, is about fitting equipment to the vehicle to ensure that vulnerable road users can be detected. So it's about improving indirect vision, not about direct vision. Why DVS is important? This is, quite an important thing to say as TfL for any transport authority to stand before any audience and say that fewer people are being killed on our road network now than 5 years ago, and certainly fewer people are being killed than 10 years ago, is a success story. And I think we forget that, the journey that we're on is to reach Vision Zero, but we have had some successes, and it's important to celebrate those successes. And DVS is part of that, and it's contributing to it. But we've got to go further. So the Mayor has decided that from October this year, that standard would be raised and that we would be bringing the progressive safe system. And that's where I'm going to hand over to Joseph. So I'll just
thank you, Scott. That was really, really good. Just kind of set the groundwork for the DVS scheme. So we've talked about kind of the safe system and kind of what the DVS expects so far. I think it's really important that we kind of don't just rest on our laurels and say that having introduced this scheme kind of that's it and we're not going to go any further. Although this is kind of a really good initiative to kind of make sure that we are challenging the freight industry and making sure that kind of we're doing as much as we can to improve direct vision from the front cab and to really kind of set that standard and make it clear. We are still, unfortunately, have more to do, where we're seeing that kind of zero-star vehicles are still kind of involved in fatal collisions in London. You can see that the stats that there are kind of 4 of the 6 fatal collisions that occurred in London's roads in 2021. Vision was cited as a contributing factor, and that involved kind of zero-star vehicles. And all of the kind of the 3 vehicles involved in fatal collisions in 2022 were 0 to 2 star rated. So we clearly kind of have a need to go further here. I think the existing safe system that we set out for when the DVS scheme was first introduced applied just to 0-star vehicles, and we very much kind of set that technology based on the limits of kind of what's available at the time, what like HGV operators, what your average truck driver can easily go out and source and fit to their vehicles. We have this kind of policy commitment built in right from the start in our kind of Vision Zero action plan and the freight servicing action plan to increase that standard, and that's kind of what we are doing from the 28th of October this year. That's kind of increasing the standard from the minimum threshold rating from 0 stars, 1 star to 3 stars we have to be at to avoid fitting the progressive safe system. Just kind of takes into account improvements to kind of technology that we've moved on a lot from where we were in 2019, 2020 when the Direct Vision Standard was first introduced. And now there's a lot more advances in kind of blind spot sensors, moving off information systems are now more widely available. So we've got in terms of what we're introducing later this year, I'm just showing the graphic of the new progressive safe system on screen. And we're calling it the progressive safe system because it's essentially based on the existing safe system set of equipment measures that already 0-star vehicles are required to fit. But now this will apply to kind of 0, 1 and 2 star vehicles. And the main differences are the blind spot sensors that are now mandatory for under this regime, and also the moving off information systems, which is a new requirement. And we consulted on the form and kind of the content of this last year in the spring, and it will now be kind of mandatory for 0 to 2 star rated vehicles in London from October this year. We like this slide just because it kind of shows a bit about why we are introducing the DVS and why we are kind of targeting HGV cabs. I think you can kind of get a clear idea from the images there that HGV cab design has not innovated much in the last kind of half century or so. You can so see the same basic model product kind of throughout the decades or so. But with the introduction of the DVS, it has really resulted in a kind of a change and a massive increase in the amount of direct vision that a driver has from the front cab of the HGV. And I think that is clearly kind of just points to the level of challenge and the level of innovation that we're kind of asking for with the Direct Vision Standard. I think that we recognise that is a big kind of change that heavy goods vehicles would need to make. But I think that's important just to kind of really make sure that we're designing that, really like doing everything we can to progress towards having as much vision as possible and really being able to eliminate all of the road casualties that we can. We wanted to make sure as part of this that we are kind of supporting the industry as much as we can. So this is not just us kind of coming along as Transport Authority and telling people what to do, but we're actually providing the support and the information for people to be able to fit their safe system measures that we've set out. So we have that set out quite clearly in our updated guidance for HGV drivers. And we've also published clear technical specifications for the blind spot sensors and the moving off information system products. And that was quite important as a learning kind of from phase 1 of the Direct Vision Standard, where we didn't have those specifications. And I think it's just really important if you're going to do something like as drastic as kind of asking HGV drivers to fit products like to their vehicles, and to specifically do that in a relatively short period of time as well before the scheme launches in October, then we really need to kind of set out the specifications and the technical standard and make that as clear as we can. We are working kind of quite closely with the freight industry just to kind of help them react to this and to make sure that they know what they need to do, what products they need to fit to their vehicles, and where they can go for extra information and guidance. And that has included a kind of survey of operators, and just to kind of working very closely with the freight industry and their representatives, just to kind of make sure that they understand the changes to the regime and kind of what's coming in October. So in terms of the next steps for the Direct Vision Standard, we've talked a bit about the new progressive safe system that we're introducing from October this year. There is a short grace period from 28th of October onwards, just to kind of allow kind of operators that have taken steps to arrange for the fitting of the new progressive safe system, but just need a bit more time to be able to do that. We'll be able to benefit from the grace period before we start it becomes mandatory for them, and that's just to kind of even out the burden on the supply chains, just recognising that there are something like 220,000 zero-star to two-star vehicles operating in London. So clearly that's quite a massive range of vehicles, and they'll all be needing to kind of fit this kit and get ready before October. There's not a lot of time for that. And we are committed to kind of review the DVS and the HGV safety permit scheme again in 2028. And this will kind of take into account any further advances in technology. I mean, we may all be kind of beaming up and using autonomous vehicles by then, but I somehow doubt that there won't continue to be a need to kind of push for the best kind of possible vision you can get from your HGV's front cab. So that would be kind of just our commitment to continuing with the scheme and just making sure that we are using the best possible standards of safety equipment and products in our progressive safe system. So that's been a very whistle-stop tour of the Direct Vision Standard and kind of the work we're doing with the PSS and the new kind of safety measures that we're setting out for heavy goods vehicles. Scott and I would be happy to take any questions or any challenges, thoughts, but otherwise I put our contact details up there, but otherwise we'll leave it there. But thank you.
Time at the end. So, Richard, will you go first?
Thank you very much. Great presentation. Have you had any contact with any of the transport authorities or regions in the UK that they can?
Yes. So I think Manchester have publicly said that they are actively looking to bring this in. I can't comment much more because we're not Transport for Manchester. So I know that they are, but we've certainly had contact with Oslo, Berlin, Amsterdam, Brussels, Barcelona, and New York. And I think one of the presentations was talking about change, and I think there's always a bit difficult being a leader, which is what DVS is that we are the first people to be doing this. And it doesn't mean to say that we get everything right, but there have been some successes, and I think other European cities are looking at what we are doing and saying, I quite like that idea, but then they just don't want to bring it in just yet, but we've certainly had a lot of conversations across Europe in particular, and New York are very keen as well, so yes.
Brilliant. One more question in the back.
Thank you very much. Extremely interesting. My first question was actually exactly what just got asked, so that's addressed already. My other question, in terms of apply, I mean, this is obviously mostly intended for an urban environment, but in terms of its applicability to all heavy goods vehicles, do you see this as something that could roll out to an entire market? I mean, I think we could all agree that improved visibility is something that is an objective for all.
I mean, there's no reason why not, to be honest. I mean, I think this scheme is aimed very much at London because we are London's transport authority, and that's kind of the area that we're responsible for and we cover. But I mean, certainly, as Scott mentioned, there's a wide variety of other cities and areas out there that are looking at replicating this, and there's no particular reason why I guess this couldn't be set out at a national level, and that's not something that we would be able to kind of comment on. But certainly, we are looking at kind of spreading our learnings as much as we can, and we're very available to speak to anyone that is interested in kind of learning from this and applying a similar scheme elsewhere.
And it's also worth saying that Euro NCAP has taken a lot of learning from the DVS standard, so in their new kind of PACTS standard.
I was thinking of motorways rather than just city spaces.
It's possible, but just saying
And I think that's an interesting reflection, because most of the things that we hear today, and definitely some of the standards, actually, they do not see boundaries. And when they don't, either geographical, from a local to a regional to a national level, or even across different countries, it's quite important to just copy the approaches where possible, and try not to innovate where someone has already innovated and they have found the solution. So innovate where it's required, but where the solution is out there, just adopt and scale up. Brilliant. We'll have a little bit more time for more questions and answers at the end, but just want to say a huge thank you for the presentation, and just one more round of applause. And I think next it is RSSB, so Tavid, yeah.
Right, so just grab my glass. Thank you.
And we'll be hearing a little bit more about strategies and plans.
So I always find it great that the rail industry gets invitations to road safety events, but those who know me know that I'm very passionate about this subject, and I've worked for the last 10 years at RSSB to ensure that we are starting to address road safety in the same way that we manage rail. So I'm going to take you on a bit of a, I need my presentation slides. Oh, do I just, thanks. That's me, there we go. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of a journey, touching on the way, some of the key strategic areas that we've been looking at. I've only got 15 minutes, so I'm going to really have to rattle through what we're doing. As those who know me know that I like to talk about this subject a lot. I hope that's okay with everyone. So I'm going to look around the subject of poor data, the general lack of awareness, even though we're the rail industry, everything outside the fence is something we don't really know about, and focus specifically on the hazards and risks associated with driving for work purposes across the rail industry. Then I want to look at the benefits of road traffic collision investigation, using your safety management systems to reduce risk and increase effectiveness of managing occupational road risk. And then finally start looking at some of the technology, we've been talking about that today, and how it's beginning to change the landscape and influence not just the behaviours of drivers, but also for managers and senior leaders, and that's the bit that interests me the most. So a bit about the past, a bit about the present, and a little bit about the future. So, we have a history, we do. So between 2009 and 19, there were 20 workforce fatalities. 50%, 10 of those were on the road. And it was a bit of a wake-up call for the rail industry because, mentioned earlier on, the Renown incident in 2013, investigated by the ORR, really brought home the fact that actually, we're killing our workforce out there. During the pandemic, we saw a massive reduction in road traffic collisions. We all know what reason for that. Unfortunately, we did lose 8 rail workers during that period of time, which was quite a shock for the rail industry because we'd seen quite a plateau for years. But since the pandemic, and I'm sure you all recognise, road traffic collisions have gone through the roof again. And in the last few years, we've had 3 fatalities. A lot of reasons behind that. I'm not going to go into detail. We could all sit and ask ourselves why the attitudes of people have changed since the pandemic. But there does seem to be this sort of I don't care attitude. It's all about me, sort of running through everything. And it's making it quite difficult as we start to address behaviours, which I think is the key now. It's fair to say that road driving risk is still one of the most significant risks for railway workers. And if nothing else from today, I'm going to take away as a recognition, it's across all industries in the UK, not just the rail industry. And sadly, I have to say that these figures are just the tip of the iceberg. We only collect, as RSSB, road traffic collision data where there's an injury. We don't collect all of road traffic collision data. I wish we did, because it would give us such a picture. All those near-miss incidents, we'd have a much richer picture of what's going on. And particularly with new technology, particularly forward-facing cameras, where there are collisions, we're starting to understand why. Fatigue particularly is one of the great wake-up calls from cameras, I think. There are a number of factors. I'm not going to go through all of them in detail today, but I would just like to focus on the fact that one of the reasons we have inconsistent reporting standards in the railway is that most of our rail industry standards refer to road transport as non-rail vehicles. So even in our own language, we don't even recognise that they're road vehicles. We call them non-rail. So there's still a big cultural shift to have to take everybody through. The other one I want to just focus on is the data silos. And I'm picking this one because I've had a number of conversations today. And for me, it's that disconnection between health and safety teams and road transport departments. And I'm a health and safety guy, and it was a wake-up call for me to realise and remember and recognise that occupational road risk is probably one of the last bastions of workforce safety yet to be properly addressed. And that, you know, we can point fingers at Riddle, we can point fingers at all the rest, but it's down to companies and their advisors, health and safety advisors, to bring home the fact that occupational road risk is a safety worker risk. I'm pausing there for effect, as you can tell. So let's look at how we've started to address it. We set up collaboration arrangements to raise awareness, but also to start prompting and asking for more data, because we're starved of data like everyone else. And the aim was just to bring people together and start sharing and learning. What's going on with you? What are you guys doing? How are you tackling it? What have you got in place? It's focused around the four main railway sectors, so train operators, freight operators, network rail, and of course our supply chain, the principal contractors. It's a massive supply chain. And we started off by forming a road risk group, that's the bit in the centre, which I facilitate, and we drew together a whole range of people to help us start to understand the enormity of this risk. Around the edges you can see, I've got in green there, ISLG Network Rail. ISLG is the Infrastructure Safety Leadership Group. Network Rails is the Health and Safety Regional Directors Group. POS Office, the Passenger Operators Safety Forum, and the last one's National Freight Safety Group. They're leadership groups. So we have leaders around the business now who we can inform. We've encouraged each of them to set up their own road risk groups so they can actively start getting their members together to share good practice. Might seem overly complicated, but I couldn't run it all from my group. We're a big company. We're a big organisation. On the top right, we have the ORR, HSE, British Transport Police, and trade unions, all four of them. So it's quite an impressive group there. And helping us, external members, Arriva, ROSPA, Transport for London, DVSA, ARM, Association for Road Risk Management, chairman sat over there, and National Highways. I put them in red because these are the guys that have really helped us to bring road safety to the rail industry. Let me just turn my bit of paper. So we set up a strategic partnership with them, I guess now must be getting on 5 years now, I think. And we've worked very closely together, partly because the ORR sits over the top of National Highways and ourselves too. I guess there's a synergy there. But we recognise that by combining our forces with my collaborative structure across the railway and their information, guidance and resources, we had something to offer. So we brought everyone together. But they don't just extend to those groups. It goes down into the rail industry itself. So each of those road risk groups has membership from every rail company, every supplier sitting on those groups. And they are all the road risk champions. Now they form an integral part of making sure that what we discuss at the forum has a bottom trickle-down effect. Everyone gets to be part of it. But not only that, it allows us to link it properly. So we have the opportunity to share and learn across the groups, but they also have access to the Driving Better Business programme. And each road risk champion is registered with the Driving Better Business programme. We've worked really hard now. There's a registration scheme for companies. There's portals for each company now to be able to draw down the necessary information and disseminate that across their drivers and their employees, their managers and their leaders. But also we've linked it to ARM. ARM is the Association for Road Risk Management. We recognised we needed a professional body that is able to give information, training, guidance, excuse me, help them to develop their skills and knowledge in this area. So it's quite a robust process now. We've been doing, so I guess it's been up and running properly now for about, since the pandemic, a couple of years now. So what did we do? One of the things we did was we recognised that investigations are a key part of it. We weren't getting very good data, but what we did get, we weren't investigating it. During the last 5 years, there have been 28 serious incidents, life-threatening incidents. 16 were supposed to have been investigated, although only one report was ever published. As a result, as an industry, we learned nothing to inform anything towards road risk reduction or for continuous improvement. So we put a toolkit together. This hasn't been done by me, it's been done by a big team of people right across the industry, all participating, good practice, etc. And in that toolkit, we have a video introduction, a toolkit, and a template. And the template's the important part because we're not training people to be investigators. We expect investigators to be trained already. We're giving them the guidance they need to properly investigate road traffic collision incidents, not on the highway, but in terms of the company. Did I have the right things in place to be able to manage this job? What are the contributing parts of that accident or incident that I can bring back and learn from to prevent it from happening again? We introduced bow tie. Is anyone familiar with bow tie techniques? Okay, so we're using bow tie techniques. This was partly my bit, I guess. I wanted something that linked in the management systems. So the template was designed primarily to help investigators understand the key elements of the safety management system that were being deployed, the road risk controls that were in place and where they may have failed, and to help areas for monitoring and improving risk control. The bow tie actually does help, it's a visual tool, and I'll show some of it in a second. And it's there to help the investigator understand where, I've only got 5 minutes left. I'm gonna have to rattle through some of this. But to understand where legal compliance, as well as management and system integrity, where those defects or where improvements can be made. It allows a pragmatic assessment of each threat line so they can determine where those individual risk controls may have failed. So here's an example, just going to rattle through this quickly now. So this is the example of the enabling line, which is dealing with the systematic barriers. So it's been designed in accordance with 45001, which is occupational health and safety management, and 39001, road traffic safety. Now that part is the link for me that brings those two together and brings it to the health and safety departments. What we then did is worked with Nicola James when we did the driving and riding for work guidance. We brought that into the bow tie as well. So these are the particular areas controlling the actual risk threats. So based on the guidance, now they're in the order that I like to see them: journey, vehicle, driver. What's your reason for going out there in the first place? Then make sure that you choose the appropriate vehicle for the job that you want to do, and then you match the driver to that. So there's a pragmatic view on how it's being done. I haven't got time to go into more detail. The last part is the consequences. So after the incidents happened, what happens next? And what we did was just wanted to look at 5 key areas really, which I've got listed up there. Fatalities, the injury to person, damage to vehicle, business impact, environmental impact. There may be others, but most of what we're looking at in terms of consequences can be fitted into those 5 categories. So I am now here, and I think this is probably the one slide I wanted to take away. So this is based on Plan, Do, Check, Act. This is the heart of your safety management system. If you're doing nothing else, then you should be making sure that you're managing the risk, using the outcomes of your investigation to drive that continuous improvement. I'll leave it up for a few seconds longer. I will be publishing the slides afterwards so you can have a look at this in detail. And just to finish off really, I want to quickly talk about activity data. Now a lot of people slate it because, oh, there's speeding, it might be the cameras, it might be the fact that it's picking up a different road and all this. Take speeding out for a minute if you like. The rest of the data that you get is still amazing. To be able to know where your vehicles are, how far they've travelled, the length of the journey. They're just 3 things. total mileage for me would do. If I knew what all the mileage was that my vehicles are doing, I'd have a normalised. I'd have something to say, hey, there's my benchmark. If you're doing less mileage, it's less risk. Not only that, we've now got data apps that inform things like driver vehicle checks, licensing. All that data is immense for managers and leaders to use to help inform what they're doing. I've got time very quickly. So I want to talk a little bit about behaviours, because I think the overall thing is, and we've talked about it a lot, it seems like the elephant in the room, but it's all about changing behaviour. Not just the driver, it's about changing management perception, it's about changing leadership and culture. I won't go through them all in detail. But by promoting a positive and active approach to managing this risk, organisations can influence management behaviour and create much better environments for their business and their staff. And that's a fact for me. To give you an idea what I'm talking about, so this is what most of the data systems can give, and some more. The trouble is they're all different. Last survey I did, there were 10 different systems in use across the railway. So trying to get normalised data from them all is very difficult, but we're working on it. Why are we working on it? Because this is no benchmark, this is just raw data, one snapshot, but it's so impactful. And this is what we're starting to put in front of managers and leaders now, so they can start to see exactly where it's all going. So in summary, reporting RTC events are vital to understanding the risk to your workforce and public. Collaboration is the key to sharing good practice and learnings together. An effective investigation provides the basis for continuous improvement, and using activity data is the future to unlocking the opportunities for changing attitudes and behaviours. Thank you. Can I take my glasses off now?
I just want to ask any immediate questions, or shall we park some of them for the end of the session? I cannot see anyone shouting.
I've shell-shocked everyone.
You can park them for the end of the session. Thanks everyone again.
Thank you.
And I think next we have Hannah. So TfL and revolutionizing
Say that, but
fast food delivery. Yes.
right. Yes. Hi. So I work for Transport for London in road safety strategy, and I'm going to give you a brief overview over the work we did with the meal and grocery delivery industry over the last 3 years or so. Before I start, I want to give you a bit of context, policy context, to explain why we're looking at this and why this work is important for us. So, as my colleague said, we are working towards Vision Zero. We don't believe it is inevitable or acceptable for anybody to get killed or seriously injured while travelling around the city. The Mayor has set us a very ambitious target of eliminating all death and serious injury from London's roads by 2041. We're trying to achieve this through our 5-pillar safe systems approach, which you know about: safe speeds, we're lowering speed limits across the city, safe streets. For example, our Safer Junctions program will fall under that. Safe vehicles, Direct Vision Standard, safe behaviours, which is our road safety campaigns and training, as well as post-collision learning. Obviously, this is not something that we can achieve alone. We have to work very closely with partners. We're working with the London boroughs and the Metropolitan Police on this, but we believe everybody, including industry, has a role to play in this. So, within this context, we are particularly concerned about motorcycles. Why? Because motorcycles are the highest risk mode of transport on the road. They make up about 2.6% of the vehicles, of the distance travelled by vehicles in London, but account for 27% of the KSIs. Just to put the number on that, we're seeing about 1,000 people getting killed or seriously injured in London on motorcycles every year. So you are 80 times more likely to get killed or seriously injured on a motorcycle than you would be if you're travelling in a car. In addition to that, motorcycles are also disproportionately involved in collisions that kill and seriously injure another road user. And within the sort of bracket of motorcycles, we are concerned about low-powered motorcycles. We define low-powered motorcycles as motorcycles with an engine size of below 125 cc. And we're worried about them because they make up about 60% of the KSIs, motorcycle KSIs, and also they have the lowest training requirement out of any motorized vehicle on the road. So you can ride a low-powered motorcycle on a learner plate, with compulsory basic training, which is one-day training course, no pass or fail, no theory element. So, and this is really where the delivery industry comes in, because we know from engagement with delivery companies and the Metropolitan Police, as well as from just looking around, that a lot of couriers are using these low-powered motorcycles for their work. It's really difficult, we talked about this, to know how many of them are out there or how many miles they do. But from talking to companies, we estimate that there's about up to 40,000 operating in London. And as we know, the industry, the meal and grocery delivery industry, has grown exponentially over the course of the pandemic and is predicted to grow further. So this is not something that's going away. On the contrary, we're expecting to see more of these vehicles. So it's really, really vital that we're working with the industry to help keep motorcycles and those they share the roads with safe. A little bit about the meal and grocery delivery industry. So the way road safety is managed in the industry depends largely on the business model, the employment model the companies have chosen to adopt. And there's essentially two main ways in which companies are set up. There's a bit of overlap and hybrid, but so for simplicity's sake. So you have employing companies, much more traditional way or straightforward way of working. They employ their couriers. They also tend to have a product, and they also tend to have a fleet. So it's pizza shops or grocery stores or whatever, and they sell their product to customers that are then delivered by their employed couriers, and they usually give them a vehicle to do that work with. They sort of exercise quite a lot of control over their employees in a traditional sense. They expect them to show up for a shift, they schedule a shift, they want them to work that shift, they pay them for that shift. And yeah, but with that sort of employment model come quite a lot of worker protections and really quite clear-cut responsibilities under health and safety law, what an employer is meant to do to look after their employees, so which we have talked about. But then you have platform companies, and platform companies it's a newer way of working, and they're essentially tech companies. So they provide an app that connects couriers with restaurants or stores and customers. And these companies don't actually own anything apart from the app. They sort of they connect independent or like self-employed couriers with independent restaurants. They also don't have a fleet because the self-employed couriers use their own vehicles for the work. So it's a very flexible way of working. What normally happens is that a courier would sign up to one of these platform companies. Once they have an account, they can then choose to work as much or as little as they like, with the companies having really minimal involvement in that. That means, you know, so flexibility is one thing, however, they have fewer protections, and the way health and safety is sort of managed is different, because the onus now tends to be on the self-employed courier themselves to manage their own health and safety as well as their own vehicle, with the companies taking a much more sort of advisory role in this. Yeah, so it's quite different, but also what is kind of maybe worth noting before sort of moving on, there's quite a lot of sensitivity in the industry around the employment status. There are quite a few sort of quite high-profile cases recently where the courts looked at the employment status and sort of questioned whether the people working for these platform companies were truly self-employed or whether they were should be reclassified as workers. And what the courts looked at was not so much what the contract says. It doesn't really matter if it says you're self-employed. What they were interested in is how that relationship looks in practice. So, and there's two sort of key factors, I suppose, is like how much control does the company exercise over the individual, and does that individual have an unfettered right to substitute? So if you're self-employed, you're allowed to nominate somebody else to do the work on your behalf without the companies getting too much involved in that process. So, and in those cases, the court have found, no, actually these people weren't truly self-employed and were classified as workers, which has massive implications for the companies in terms of those financial implications, but also in terms of responsibility they have for their workers. So since these cases, it's very sensitive for platform companies, and they're very cautious to stay within the realms of the self-employed sort of employment status and not to be seen to be directing or interfering with the right to unfettered substitution. So just a bit about sort of our work with the companies. We started talking to them back in 2021. We're in the middle of the pandemic. They were like becoming really popular, and we didn't really know much about them. We hadn't worked with them before. So we decided to work with them, to get to know them. We set up 2 rounds of one-to-one meetings where we sort of, introduced ourselves, talked about road safety, talked about Vision Zero with them, and found out how they were organized, what their issues were, etc., and started building a relationship with them. It was a really interesting sort of journey because, like I said, we hadn't worked with them before, so it was all kind of quite new to us. But also there's quite a lot of, there's quite a lot of ideas floating around, people thinking about safety, but everybody's doing it sort of in isolation. So then we decided actually it's really quite good if we bring everybody together in a forum, in an industry forum, to talk about road safety, like a safe space to exchange ideas, talk about what everybody's thinking on, share issues. We had really quite good sort of success with that in other industry, including construction, for example. So that's what we did in November 2022. We had our first forum. It was a really good day. We invited the Health and Safety Executive to come along and talk about the regulatory framework. We also had a Met there. Very positive, lots of sort of talking and sharing. Then at the forum we floated the idea of having a more formal commitment in terms of a voluntary charter, which was positively received really, and then we spent the next year or so working really closely and collaboratively with the companies to develop the charter, which was then published in September last year. What we did was, because we didn't want the work to end there, because there's more to do, we've coupled the charter signage to a commitment to attend a 6-monthly or so industry forum where we continue talking to them about road safety and where we continue sharing. We had the last one a couple of months ago, which was quite good. We had Driving for Better Business come as well and talk. It was a good day, and we're planning now the next one for the summer. So a little bit about the charter itself. It's quite a snappy document. It's based on 10 sort of key road safety principles, including things like a commitment to Vision Zero, and onboarding, provision of PPE, reporting, etc. And the principles are sort of based on our safe systems approach, but they're also aligned with HSE guidance on driving and riding safely for work. And each of these sort of 10 principles are split into 2 clauses, A and B, for employing companies and for platform companies to reflect the sort of slightly different legal requirements for them. We're really pleased because we had 5 companies and 5 big companies sign up to this, which is good. So we had Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Just Eat, Stuart, and Getir sign up to it. So next steps, there's still quite a lot to do, and we're sort of in a regrouping phase at the moment, trying to think what to do next. But really, so apart from trying to sort of mop up the other companies that haven't signed up but are also operating in the industry, which we're trying to do, we're also thinking of, we focus on motorcycles because they're such high risk, but really we know that a lot of couriers are using other modes of transport, including e-bikes. So, is it worth broadening the scope to other modes? It's all kind of systemic stuff anyway, so it kind of would lend itself quite naturally to that. Also then, if we're doing that, then there's, it's probably worth thinking about if we should expand it to other industries, including parcel delivery, etc., especially where we have like last mile delivery, that kind of thing. Yes, and then so we focus very much on the platform company, or on the delivery companies and their relationship with the couriers. But what we haven't really done in the process is to look at the whole supply chain, and we haven't spoken to restaurants, for example, and is there merit in trying to see if they have a place in this, and how can they influence road safety? So that is definitely something that we want to explore. Yes, and then the other thing we're trying to do, which is a pain really, is data, because it's not great, as we know, but it's especially bad when it comes to the gig economy. We really don't know anything. So what can we do? We're in the process of trying to sort of explore different avenues. At the moment, we're running into quite a lot of closed doors, but if anybody has any bright ideas, then welcome to hear them. So yeah, and that's that.
Any immediate questions on that presentation?
Just hopefully information. So through, we're responsible for a lot of delivery of the Road Abuse and Review. National Highways funded a project which is produced a media package using virtual reality, and also something goes onto a phone that will be free to use. So I think if it's a lot of your principles there, if it's something you want, I've just pinged on LinkedIn. So perhaps it might be something, because we want to find a use for it. So it's a free product to go out to the RIC, it's funded publicly. So there's no commercial into it. We just want to make sure that it gets used. So perhaps I'll
Yeah, excellent. Let's catch up offline. But yes, thank you.
Sounds perfect. Sounds like a solution that actually has a problem attached to, which is good. Yes.
I have a question from Edward Barry, SMUK, from the online attendees. I think it's probably a question that's for mostly the TfL speakers. It says, how will TfL enforce compliance of correct specification of equipment fitted to HGV, as the current method self-certification doesn't seem to go far enough to ensure the new PSS is met, bearing in mind the different interpretations of the specifications?
So, clarity of standard and enforcement of standard.
Mm.
And anything to reflect on that?
So, Chris, if I can help answer that question. So, enforcement will be on-street spot check, as it is at the moment with PSS. In regards to the PSS itself, we've produced technical specifications for moving off information system MOIS and the blind spot information system BSIS at the request of the freight industry, and those have been in the public domain since June last year. So there is an element of self-certification to the PSS, but that is because TfL doesn't have the power to regulate that part of it. And we have worked quite closely with both Loughborough University, who produced the technical specifications for us, and also equipment suppliers to ensure that those those technical specifications are as clear as we can make them. But by their very nature, they are technical specifications, and they are technical and not the easiest thing you're going to be able to read. But the whole point is that they are there to ensure we filter out those collisions that are moving off from rest and when a HGV turns left.
Just to reflect on that, actually, that's a good example where when you go beyond the statutory duties and powers that you have within a regulatory or legislative framework, sometimes you have to do that until the framework changes, if that makes sense. So it's a good practice, because taking action when action is not expected of you is, I think, almost the definition of being proactive and trying to effect change. Any other questions?
If I could just add to that as well, I think part of it is not just the legislative framework, but also that a lot of the technology that we're kind of setting out in the PSS and covering in the specifications is really like at the forefront of what's available in the market and what's possible to do practically now. So the specifications that we have are deliberately cast as quite performance based, and that we don't endorse any one product or kind of brand of equipment, because a lot of it is new and emerging, and we kind of, as a result of that, we kind of recognise, as Scott was saying, that it is kind of in some ways it could be open to interpretation, but I'd actually be slightly provocative in answer to that and say in some ways that's a good thing, because it helps you to kind of problem solve, and you really have to kind of think about how exactly you're going to kind of eliminate those blind spots, and how you're going to fit that equipment, and how you're going to use those safety measures that you've got fitted there. So I know that's kind of slightly pushing back against the kind of where you want to be told exactly what's the exactly what products to fit and when to fit them, and just be told what to do in that sense. But in a sense, we're kind of almost opening up and sort of giving you the freedom and the flexibility to be able to use those specs and to design it in a way that suits your vehicle.
Sounds fantastic. Brilliant. Steve?
Back to motorbikes, because we know that 60% of the incidents involving small bikes, and we know that there's been an increase in delivery services. Do we have the data that tells us that the bikes in the crashes are the ones in the delivery services? I suspect we know, but by history, the Department of Transport has been looking at this since at least 1989, which I was involved in it, and every time we looked at it, we couldn't find any evidence to suggest that actually those were the guys who were at or posing the risk.
We don't know. It's a big problem. We don't know, and especially if you look, actually, it's even worse for motorbikes than it is for other modes of transport, because the journey purpose is almost not recorded at all for motorcycles. In addition, you have the gig economy, where it's really difficult, even for like enforcing police officers, to work out whether they're actually working at the time, because they're multi-apping, they're working 1 minute, then they're not working, then they're working for 5 different companies at the same time. So it's very, very challenging. It's a very transient workforce as well. It's like you have sometimes it changes all the time. So it's really, really, really difficult to know how many of them there are at any one point. And then to estimate their involvement in collisions is almost impossible. And then also the employment model itself is so difficult, because then you have almost 2 tiers of couriers. You have the couriers that actually have an account with the companies, and then you have their substitutes working. So it's very difficult to really get a grasp on it.
Just related to that, I mean, there's an international example, which is South Korea. They don't have all of the information that you're referring to, the gaps that exist here, but something that's particularly interesting. So you mentioned 2.6% of kilometres travelled is by motorcycles. Well, in Korea, it's 25% of kilometres travelled, all because of that delivery gig economy. We don't have enough information about its links exactly to trauma, but we do know that 55% of all deaths in Korea are motorcyclists and pedestrians, because a huge proportion of those kilometres that travel are on pedestrian facilities. So it's hopefully those are examples of the sort of indicators that bring about the kind of prioritisation for prevention.
Absolutely. And I'll generalize a little bit, because I can see a theme coming up here, which is actually knowing which data is critical for understanding certain issues is important, and then doing everything we can collectively, everyone in this room, to actually get that data is important, because maybe not one organization, or most probably not one organization will have that. So actually knowing what things we are striving for is quite important. And just to reflect on the RSSB presentation, like when you say bow tie, for example, it may point you towards 20 different data sources, fine, but out of those 20, which are the top 3, 4, 5 that actually are best linked with your end outcome, killed and seriously injured? So getting that right is quite important. Any other thoughts on that presentation, or shall we go to our last one? So last but not least, Kieren from Openreach. Thank you.
Afternoon, everyone. Hope you're well. Got to top all those good presentations now. I don't think that's going to happen at all. So good afternoon. My name's Kieren. I'm calling from one slide. Openreach. So what is Openreach? I guess you're going to ask me to fix your broadband. That's not going to happen today, all right? So we'll get that out there straight away. If you need that, that's weekends only. I'll do that for you for free. So Openreach, how big are we? So we have over 30,000 vehicles on our fleet, over 34,000 drivers. We do 260 million miles a year. That's 10,000 laps of the Earth, so Google tells me. I'm not sure if that's right. I haven't driven it all, but that's one hell of a fuel bill, right? So that's it's massive. So we've delivered over 15,000 new recruit in-vehicle driver sessions since 2020, which is massive. So every one of our drivers that comes to work for Openreach gets in a vehicle type they will be driving for Openreach. So if it's a van, whether it's a mute, whether it's a HGV, they all get trained in the vehicle they've done, and they all assessed individually by an independent driving trainer team as well, which is great, because actually we have HGV drivers that have been on driving in ice road trucking, but they failed our driver assessment. And they're like, what, in a transit van? And I went, yeah, you have. Thankfully, I've got one of my driver trainers here, Pete, who will vouch for me that, you know, that they think that because you drive something so big, how am I going to fail this nice, easy test from Openreach? But they do. And we're really strict on what we do with our driver training, so we'll go through that. And we've been through our safe systems, slightly different to everybody else's, most probably. But we have a thing called our 12 life-saving rules within Openreach, and I'm really proud to say that actually road safety features in 3 rules out of the 12. So we have our safe roads, which is obviously we don't only drive on the roads, we work in the roads as well. So we have to protect the public and ourselves whilst we're working the highways, digging them up or fixing faults. Our safe driving, so no distractions, seat belts at all times, and obey the speed limits. And obviously, our safe people one, which is we don't come intoxicated to work and we don't drive, operate machinery, and more importantly, don't drive for work, so that's drink and drugs. And they're 3 of our key 12 life-saving rules we have within Openreach. Safe vehicles, yes, we have some of the best vehicles on the market, so we always look to buy the best, but it's not only that, it's actually how do we maintain them, how do we do our vehicle checks, our gate exit checks. We're really, really strict on our gate exit checks, so they're done throughout the country randomly. No one ever knows we're going to turn up with our compliance team to say, actually, we're going to stop every vehicle before it goes out of the yard. We check for loading, tyres, the works. And it's an informative session that we do with our drivers alongside our union partners at CWU to make sure actually the drivers understand that actually when you're going outside those gates, you're risking your licence and also other people's lives as well. So it's really important for us. So we do all that with our enforcement bit, but actually we've been on a massive journey for Openreach. It's never been an easy thing for having such a big fleet. And I guess pre-2015, we didn't even look at driver crashes in our data. And then my boss, Joe Benson, decided actually I'm going to start taking a notice of what we're doing regarding accident stuff. We started creating a bit of data, and actually we saw our new recruits that are coming into the business causing a lot of crashes, never been trained in a vehicle. So actually we implemented in-vehicle driver training, and obviously we took a big step because obviously over the last 4 years we've employed next to 15,000 people across. So even during COVID we're employing. So we employed me as a road risk manager because I come from operations after 20 years of Openreach. I never had a driving test when I joined Openreach. Here's keys, off you go, which is great. I think I might have failed. But that's a different story. And then obviously we did something a little bit different because Joe brought in tracking of accidents, but actually what happened with that? Not a lot happened with the data. So we thought, what can we do differently? So we introduced VSE and HPE. So very serious accident, which obviously life-changing incident, loss of limb, fatality. Thankfully, touch wood, not had one. And then we brought in HPEs, which is high potential events. So actually, every single RTC now is investigated and is logged on our near-miss procedures system. So actually, everyone is investigated because there's a potential that we may have missed something along the journey. So that's really key for us because we had an incident, and it was just, I was looking through the RTC data, and I was like, driver crashed, he had a blackout, crashed into a house with a mute. It's quite a big thing. But it didn't get reported on a near miss because no one was injured. And I was like, right, okay, so now we have to start looking at what we could potentially do because there was a potential that could have been a fatality or much more, multiple fatalities. So we now track that since 2020. And I think we've done quite a bit of best practice. We've had Project Edward out to spend a day with us, which is really good. We've been doing stuff with Vision Zero, Southwest, and the Devon and Cornwall Police. We've had the BBC out to come see some of the stuff we've been doing. So it's nice for us to actually show actually where we've gone from to see and keep going. If we look at, don't look at the numbers, right? So we track per million miles. So as you can see, there's been a nice downward trend. Thankfully, our HPE, which is a red line, and obviously some of these peaks are when we go into bad weather. So obviously we're always out on the road. So we've lost control of a few vehicles every now and again. But actually, we've reduced our HPs by 91%. Our RTCs per million miles have halved from where they were in 2020. So I'm quite pleased with that. Most of our RTCs, thankfully, are just bent metal. It's just like reversing. But there is potential to be life-changing injuries amongst that. So I think we've had a really good thing to make sure we've driven that down for everybody. And that's all underpinned by our safety framework. And obviously we'll share the slides, but when you come into Openreach, you have a journey as a driver, as a line manager, and everybody has to go through our road risk evaluation to make sure what their risk profiling is as we go through. And every risk profile has an outcome, whether you're low, medium, or high risk. You'll see some of that on the next bit. But we intervene at multiple stages for the managers to say, actually, you can't drive for us, you're not an acceptable level of risk for us. We'll give you some support to get you to the right acceptable level of risk. And if we can't, then we may part ways, because actually that's how seriously we take it at Openreach. If you can't drive sensible for us, you won't drive for us at all. So we underpin these as we go through, and you'll see this on this very busy slide. I can't, because we did quite a lot. So if you're a new recruit, your journey would always be driving licence check, you do your online modules, you do your road risk session. So all our new recruits have a half-day session in the vehicle type they'll drive, but they also have a half-day in the classroom stuff, looking at drink, drugs, alcohol, virtual reality, having to go in simulators, see how they get on. They then go out and get graded with their assessments. If they're low risk, they get the keys to the van, thank you very much, you can go off. If you're medium risk, you will get your keys to your van, but actually we'll come and revisit you again to redo your assessment, to say, we thought we had a few areas you can improve, and if not, you go off. If you're high risk, you do not get the keys to your van. You get the train home from training on a Friday, which is really bad, and you get the train back on Monday, so you're not allowed the keys to your shiny van. And they do not get the keys to that until they can get to an acceptable risk. We can probably exited 4 or 5 people a year on the recruit journey basis just because of that, because they can't get to the acceptable level of risk. Something we do differently is every time they go into a different type of vehicle, say you drive a transit, if you're going to move into what we call a tonner or HGV vehicle, you have to do another assessment in that vehicle you're going to learn to drive. Same with mute. One thing that got me into a bit of trouble is when we got to trailers, because certainly the government made a decision that if you're on a B&E, you can drive per trailer now. Part of the business goes, yes, we saved a load of money. I went, no, we haven't, because I'm not going to let you. So we stood firm. I say I did, got shouted out a bit from the finance director, but we wanted to make sure that we didn't just say you can drive it, because trailers are dangerous, right? They're a dangerous piece of equipment. So everybody has to go through an assessment from our external partners to make sure you can drive a trailer correctly. So it cost us a lot of money and cost me a bit of trouble, but it worked. When we get to everybody has to be reassessed throughout the year. So you have an AMS check where we check your vehicle at least once a year to make sure actually it's fit for purpose by the manager. They'll also have an AMS observation check. So your manager will be in the vehicle with you, and they'll spend a little while just driving around town, making sure, seeing what you're doing, how it's going. And if they want to, they'll refer you to driver training with an official driver trainer. We do quite strict our licence checking. We do every 6 months for commercial vehicles. Everyone gets that. Or 12 months if you're just a normal car driver. If you're a high-risk driver, you'll get your licence checked every 3 months. And something we're bringing in from next month is if you're a HGV driver, your licence will be checked every month. So, which is a step of what we need to do. So, something we've seen massive success on is our high-risk drivers. So, oh, got 5 minutes already. So our high-risk driver course is probably innovative. It's, I'll probably say 10% of all our drivers may fall into the high-risk category at some point, because it's based on your original risk rating, which is reviewed every 3 years. When you come in, we do your hazard perception stuff. And then we also your licence points on your licence, but also any crashes you have with us. That forms a good opinion. Then we'll take that into that person or that group of people out for an entire day and take them through some really intensive training using our virtual reality system. We'll put them into a car crash in VR, which is not very nice. Only had one person faint, that's a good record for us, touch wood. But also it gives them some hazard perception stuff. We really talk to them about driver training behaviours, about being great drivers on the road, not just for keeping yourself safe, but for us it's all about keeping the public safe as well. Because everyone thinks, we say everyone home safe and well, it's not just us, that's the public as well. We want everybody going home safe and well. So that is really good, something we've done that's really good over the last 12 months. We've put 1,500 people through that already, and that's seeing massive returns on that to make sure people understand the difference on behaviours. I think that's a key bit for us. And I guess this is some of the different stuff we do. And one of the good things, or not so good things, our new thing is, that's one of our EVs at the bottom. So since we, that lasted about 2 hours from when he picked it up, because there's a difference in training, right? Because of the vehicle handle's different. So as part of that accident in our Plan, Do, Check, Act is actually now we're just enforcing that all new EVs delivered will have a 2-hour training program before they get to drive it away. So to make sure they're good. And that is Openreach. Thank you.
Any questions?
Oh, no questions.
Plenty of hands. Okay, let's have
got and how far we still need to go around contractual mechanisms and levers on behavioural change. So historically, I've investigated road deaths where fatigued rail workers done a long night shift, the whole circadian rhythm thing, then driving 150 miles home. How far have we got around subcontractors, but even more shell companies? I've also investigated a temporary traffic management worker who was working at the weekend, getting ready for the Monday shift. He sort of shouldn't really been working then, but he was trying to get everything ready. He was working outside his hours, but he was in a shell company, and HSE essentially found it was very difficult to pin down the employer, because who the employer is difficult. How far do you think we've got in the different areas that you represent, and is that something that we need more awareness raising in?
I would be very tempted to answer that one, but who would like to pick that question?
You
I think it's
go,
applicable to all.
So just to remind everybody, 2013 was the Renown engineering case, which ORR took them to court. That was fatigue. So the drivers had finished a night shift, and in fact the young lad who was driving the vehicle wasn't actually licensed to drive it, and that was fatigue related. It's a massive issue, particularly for the rail industry, but I guess for lots of industries. We import and export fatigue. If I could bottle it, I'd make loads of money. We've learnt a lot from the airline industries, obviously, but it's a massive problem, and it's about work planning. Now, if I want to, I'm going to put it straight into the operational camp and say that it's the way we manage our work. We don't always include the work journey as a part of the work plan. And I think until we start producing method statements and safe systems of work that address that journey part before and after, then we're not going to get a handle on it.
Fantastic.
I think from us is we massively report on fatigue, so we look at hours worked, when they've worked, making sure they have their breaks, and the guys are told to, if you work through the night, then you take the next day off, don't panic about it, that's fine. But it's also about how we plan our work, making sure that the guys don't have to travel so far, or the drivers should say, because we've had people drive 200 miles, work all day, then drive 200 miles back. That can't happen, that's unacceptable, because they've worked hard, really, so we want to make sure that that's the key. So they all have the opportunity to say, no, I'm not doing it, I'm going to, like you say, book into a hotel, do all that kind of thing. So from a cultural perspective, we really push actually rest, only drive when you have to, and obviously just make sure that you're safe. That's the main thing.
I think talking about fatigue, I think in the gig economy it's a really big problem, and I don't know how to get how one even would start with that, because no one really monitors drivers' hours or sort of takes into consideration commuting. It's but you can multi-app, so even if the company said, oh yes, you can use your account for whatever 8 hours, then you could log on to another app and could work another 8 hours, and nobody would know and nobody would check. And then obviously the payment structure is such that it's better to work more rather than less if you want to earn more. So I think that's a big problem. And then if you're on a motorcycle, you can't even have a little sleep somewhere, like where would you go, whereas in a car you could maybe park up and have like a little nap and then carry on, but you can't really do that. So I don't know how we can even start with that, but I think it's a massive problem potentially.
So, just reflecting on that, I think from the answers, I feel there are 3 things coming out. One is understanding why that is a problem, and actually other policies, other drivers that are actually causing that. Because if it is things like the travel and expense policy doesn't allow that, well, that's then not a health and safety issue, but it does have health and safety issues. Understanding what levels of control we have is quite important. For example, controlling the policies for your own stuff, very different to the gig economy, and actually, where we can, take action. Care enough to make it a problem, and a problem that is worth resolving, and take action.
I would just say, because I don't want to appear like we don't have any fatigue management systems. We do, but they don't all work. I think this is the point, is that we have a 12-hour door-to-door rule. Companies are applying lots of fatigue assessment processes. But the reality is, and there's camera footage now, showing drivers driving off the road. I mean, it's still an issue. So whatever fatigue management systems you're using, they're not working, is the point I'm making. And I think that's the key. We put our faith in these processes, but they're not delivering. They're not all fit for purpose. We don't take into account people's home life or their societal issues. It's not just literally about the hours.
and having the openness where if something doesn't work, you go back and revise it and understand why it doesn't work and what else can be different is a huge step. Sorry, we'll have plenty of questions.
Directly related to the fatigue problem, drug driving is a huge problem, especially in construction and especially in gig. They're the two industries where it is absolutely almost out of control, is the drug driving issue. And I'm sure it is in other parts of the sector as well. And I think everybody is now attuned to the drink driving, but drink driving isn't the problem, it's now drug driving. And I think that we're a long way away from having proper strategic policies within the company sector for that. And I don't know how on earth we deal with it with the individual drivers that I'm sort of slightly more concerned about, you know, the small and medium enterprises and the self-employed.
We have legislation, obviously, for the railway. We have legislation around safety critical tasks, and there's drug and alcohol testing. So it's an integral part of doing that. But you're absolutely right. And the biggest problem, again, is that once you leave the railway and you're on the highway, who is monitoring the highway? And, you know, come back to the police. Well, you know, no disrespect to the police, but the level of monitoring is minimal, so people take the risk.
Absolutely. Also got the issue of pharmaceuticals as opposed to just illicit drugs.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just illegal drugs. Yeah, prescribed drugs.
Has no roadside testing ability. You've only got laboratory confirmation.
Absolutely, and I think we all agree there is plenty more we should and could do in that space. In some cases, different levels of control again, but where we can, then at least we need to control for that much, which is important. Sorry, plenty more questions from the back.
I have a question online for Kieren. It's from Martin Evans at TJA Associates. He says, how confident can you be that your drivers are wearing seatbelts and not using their mobile phone whilst driving? I asked this as part of the Home Office DFT Roads Policing Review we've just carried out, a pilot, Operation Ping, working with over 100 fleet companies, where we found that on average 2% of drivers weren't wearing their seatbelt or were using their mobile phone.
That's a great question, right? And I think we can't. I'd love to be in the van with them, and I really love to get in the van with all of them. And obviously, something I think we'll probably look at in Openreach at the minute is currently, you know, what tech can we put in the vehicles as a safety measure to keep them through. And I think for our guys, for our drivers, they're in and out. They're engineers, right? So they have to get up poles, get down. They forget a lot of the time to get in. But I think one of the interesting things was we did a session with the new recruits, and 2 people put up their hand that they drive without a seatbelt in a normal car. My boss nearly had a heart attack. She was like, oh my God, why would you admit that? This is your first day, what are you doing? And so we then have to talk to them about those behaviours, and then we call on our colleagues from break to tell those amazing stories, or those sad stories, I should say not amazing, but they really impactful stories about what happens when you don't. And I think having that really changes behaviour. So I'm not 100% say we're all of our drivers are amazing and brilliant, because I'd be telling a lie, but they do have behaviour issues, and obviously sometimes we will have to look at how can we do that, because I can't be with them all the time.
And actually data points towards some of those issues, like seatbelt, for example, drug driving being the main concerns that we have in many cases. So for each company, for looking after their own stuff is one thing. Also, we can work better together. So I know Operation Ping, for example, excellent example, where from a national highways perspective, DFT, private suppliers, we can actually work together and understand what can be done differently, which is the whole purpose of this exercise.
Okay, no, just really quickly. Yeah, my name's Sarah Hope, and I'm the founder of the Sarah Hope line at TfL. And yeah, just going back to fatigue being such a big issue, I just wanted to say that the bus safety team, and I've sort of held them bid with this, not, you know, I don't actually work there, but I go there, and they've done a lot of fantastic work about fatigue, the bus safety team at TfL. And I've learned so much
we might ask for who the point of contact is, but let's not mention it now. We'll mention it afterwards. Don't want to put anyone on the spot. But it would be good to
I'm
actually.
not the point of contact.
Yeah, but in TfL.
They've done great work.
Fantastic. And that's another, again, good example where vehicle, it can be done, we can look at certain features that can work in a different way. Yes. Infrastructure can look into that, driver behavior, so all of those things coming together actually can have a huge impact.
Can I drop in just an example? So we have train drivers and train crew. Often they use their own vehicles or they're using company vehicles. So to reduce the risk of using vehicles, we decided, put them in taxis. So now they're not driving, now they're passengers, and then it's the taxi drivers who are now driving off the road with fatigue. You know, we have all these different profiles of risk, and all the things we talk about today is how do you reduce that risk? How do you get them off the road?
Yeah.
The trouble is, once they stop driving, they become passengers, and then you have even less information, because we discussed that no one's picking up information on the passenger. But as a company, you still have a right, you have a duty of care, if nothing else. But you have a contract. Now you've got to monitor the contract. Now you've got to put in assurance requirements. Now you've got to monitor the taxi companies. And again, we don't have licensed systems in place for taxis. It's very difficult to get information. So every time you sort of put one bang guacamole, there's another one popping up. Bang. You know, all these different interventions that we're looking at make it incredibly difficult sometimes. When you think you've got a safe route, you reduce the risk over there, only you've introduced another element. So you've just got to be really careful.
Makes sense? Sorry, question in the back.
Hi, I'm Adam Coffey from the Royal Park and Parliamentary Group for Cycling and Walking. My question is for Kieren.
Hiya.
Do you have dash cams in your vehicles, and do you have ISA in your vehicles? And if not, why not?
Can I have an easier question? No, we don't have dash cams in the vehicles at the minute. It's one of the forms of technology we're looking at. Obviously, we do, some of the vehicles have lane assist and all that kind of stuff and bits and bobs, but not currently at the minute. That it's something that we want and something we're working towards. Obviously, it's massive, the dash cam piece, but yeah, it's something we are working towards at the minute.
And ISA?
No, not yet. So I think for us, it's some of the things we want to make sure we do along the way is how do I put it? It's trying to find the right balance for us as a business, and also with our stakeholders such as the CWU and also the other pieces. What things we can introduce into the vehicles. I think that's going to be a key bit.
Makes sense. And one last question. Sorry, we are running.
So it was cousin Kieren, but also possibly to Tony. So we do have ISA in our own fleet. But my question to you was going to be, how did you embed all of these measures with your own staff and with your unions? How easy was that process in terms of the safety?
I think we're really lucky with our CWU colleagues because actually they want the same as us, right? They want their workers to go home safe. I think that's really good. Then they challenge us to make sure we do the best for them, which is really good. And I think it's not been easy. I'm going to lie, I've had sleepless nights when I took over this job thinking, how am I going to get this done? But I think the stuff we've been doing with BRAKE, our National Road Safety Weeks, the campaigns we do throughout the year, working with the British Horse Society like Pete does, and just really engaging. We have our internal social media, we use impactful videos. I suppose the most impactful video we have is Ben's story, which is one of our engineers. He lost his son to a speeding driver, and it's a really sad story. And that formed part of our catalyst to how we got to where we are today. Every engineer, like Kate's video, every engineer sees Ben's story, and if you're lucky enough to get to meet Ben's dad, Jim, and we do all our speed awareness courses, we have our internal speed awareness course we do, and we have people crying on that course because the emotive stuff from Jim comes out, and he just lets rip, right? So there's no holds barred. I think that's really good. And I think having the partnerships with the CWU when they're out with us talking to drivers about at the gate exit checks to say, look guys, we're just here to help you. We don't want you to like crash, die or get points on your licence or a fine. We really want you to be engaged. I think that partnership is really key. Challenging sometimes, but that's in a good way, right? Because they want us to do better for our people. So I think that's really good. But it's not an easy journey.
Perfect, thank you. So, if you have any more questions, I will just say you can corner any of our panel members right afterwards. Please do that, by all means, it's encouraged. I'll try and summarize the session, but I've kept so many notes. I'll try and keep it really short. So, first one, care. care a lot and ask questions and ask lots of questions. Even when we talk about investigation, we always have that formal question in mind about formal investigation, but actually investigate why something happens and do something about it, even if it is not the formal process, is quite important. Make unsafety unacceptable. For me, that's the common theme that I get here, which is we strive for safety, good, but when we have clear examples of unsafety, make those very unacceptable, and that sets the tone, which is quite important. Get the basics right. Most of the tools in the toolbox are, from what I heard today, are not always new, fancy, really shiny new technologies. It's stuff that we can do them right, we can do them consistently, and actually we can have an impact in our businesses. And last, let's control our businesses first. We are all working in our organizations. There are plenty more of stuff that we can do, better data, better actions, better impact, better evidence. As a secondary set of impacts, we are working with lots of other people, partners, suppliers. Actually work with them and share all the good stuff we are doing, and then encourage them to do more. And then collectively we can actually push for those changes. And the last one is, if we do all of those things, actually we'll have an impact on the wider public, which is hugely important. We want to see those deaths and serious injuries and all the other accidents actually reducing across all our roads, and that's what we are all here for. Conscious Cities ends close to end of March, and we will be starting a new financial year or performance year in many organizations. I'll just ask you, think of what are your priorities for the new year. Couple of actions, huge actions that you can deliver in the next 12 months, and in the next spring conference we can actually follow up and see whether you have delivered them or not. But just a huge thank you all, and a huge round of applause for our wonderful panel members.
No, this is the most important part. This is the so what. So please, if you're on my panel, please stand up. Yes, you're up. Sorry, you shouldn't move. So we're a little bit behind time, which means I'll just have to talk slightly less. Yes, please. Yes. Yeah. So this is. What next? This is probably the most important part. We know how big the problem is. We know there's some solutions out there. We know there's some really good best practice. Yet we still have an awful lot of people that are dying on the roads because of work-related incidents. So hands up, who's been involved in a work-related incident? Yes, a few of us. So when I was just out of university, I was on a placement. Actually, no, it wasn't. It was partway through my course. And I borrowed a company car to go home for Christmas. Went to a pub, didn't have a drink, which I'd normally have 1 pint because, you can have 1 pint, can't you? I was driving out of a town. I was doing 30. I don't know why I was doing 30, but I was doing 30, given that, I was sort of 19 at the time. And I didn't realise, but someone was unconscious on the road. And I went, da-dum, da-dum. I'm just like, oh, what's that? Thinking it was like a manhole cover. And I look in the rear view mirror and there's a black plastic bag in the road. And I'm like, oh, I didn't see that. That's very strange. And then it kind of rolls over and it's got arms and legs. And I'm like, instantly sort of, didn't drive off, which, I think some people might have done. Reversed up, didn't go over him again, which is the important thing. And he's unconscious. And I'm just like, lucky someone turned up. There was a phone box there. More importantly, someone came out from a local house and said, when the police turned up, I was wondering when he was going to get run over. Because apparently he'd been walking down the centre of the road and people had been beeping and thinking like this. But, I had no evidence that I could offer them, apart from there was no marks on the car, why it would happen sort of thing. So, had that had sort of a dash cam and stuff like this, then it would have really sort of made my Christmas a bit easier, because it wasn't until after Christmas that they sort of came back and said, no further action sort of thing. But, that was me being good. And at that age, that was a little bit surprising, shall we say. But it's very worrying. And, and it's that kind of look and not see sort of thing. And I keep on asking myself, how did I not see that? And, I picked up a speeding ticket once and I thought it was the wife. And, when I found out it was me,
And I was just like, I was more concerned that I'd driven past a camera van and I hadn't seen it. And it's that kind of thing where you get to the end of your journey and you're like, well, I know I started here and I ended there, but I really don't remember the journey. And it's that kind of, I think I'm a good driver. I'm probably not better than average, shall we say. I probably am very average, and unfortunately, average is pretty shit. And that's the reality we live in, sort of thing, is that actually we're not that good, Put us behind a 1 ton, 2 ton, 3.5 ton, whatever vehicle, and that's quite a lethal combination. So, we're at this, what do we do now? So I just want to sort of bring in, we're talking about Vision Zero and stuff. Now, given that health and safety regs say that we probably shouldn't kill our own staff or anyone else, I would say, well, Vision Zero for work-related road deaths probably should be 2025. I think that's probably a bit quick for everyone, but actually, I think, we've got the sort of local authorities, national highways to sign up to a Vision Zero. We need business to sign up to a Vision Zero, which is, we won't hurt people on the road. What's a reasonable time frame to do that? Is it 10 years? Is it less? So going off to the panel. The only person you haven't met is Nick Fleming. So he's an Associate Director, Transport Mobility from BSI, but he got a mention earlier, or his standard did, so it's in there. So my panel, I'm going to go round. I'm going to start with Heather, actually. So what next?
Well, we've heard an awful lot today, and I'm still hearing a big silence about what on earth can we do about the 50% of, I'm talking about the van drivers in particular, and the large proportion of the car drivers that drive for work, let alone the motorcycles that we don't know about. How are we going to influence the people who are not associated with a company or a fleet? And one of the ways we can do that is to be sure that our supply chain is appropriately chosen and appropriately trained, and that the people that you're subcontracting to adhere to your safety principles. But that doesn't get over the problem that we have about the crew that come to put up the scaffolding around your house when it needs painting, whereas before they were allowed to go up a ladder to paint your house, but now HSE says you've got to have scaffolding, so the scaffolder comes along, and in a team, how do we approach those types of people and help them? And this has been something that's been bothering me now for about 10 years. I don't have a solution for it because they're not responsible to anybody. It's an SME or an independent company, and perhaps HSE and DVLA ought to be getting together to be providing more information at the time of driving licence renewals, MOT renewals and things like that. But that's the only suggestion I have. And the thing that I've been hearing today, and I'm coming at it from a slightly different direction, is the direct vision. And when we think that HGVs are killing about 50 pedestrians a year, and a lot of that is moving off from stationary, so the direct vision part of it, and what TfL is doing at the moment is excellent. But Richard did mention what's happening at UNECE, looking at changing the shape of the cabs. And we saw some pictures of it in the TfL presentation, but they didn't bring it to our attention quite in the same way that Richard was doing the regulation. And the regulation is there for HGVs, and it's still going through another process in the hope that we're going to get an even better direct vision for them, and that should be, hopefully, decided next month. But it will take a while to come through, and hopefully that will help save a lot of the pedestrian deaths and some of the cycling deaths of HGVs. So it's a matter of national and international regulation, as well as company and personal responsibility. And I think that, I don't know, I mean, I question tradespeople that come to my house, but then that's me.
Well, actually, just picking up on that, and I'm going to go to Hannah next. So, Hannah, why should TfL do what they're doing? Because I feel like industry has dropped the ball, because you're sort of saying, no, we need safer vehicles. But if we look at the Health and Safety Executive and the requirements in there, they should have safe vehicles. They should have vehicles that are appropriate, that don't kill people. So you shouldn't have to sort of say, no, they've got to do this. So, is there an ownership issue in here?
Yes, but I think you can't, like, it's hard to sort of generalize, actually, because we have different employment models in different industries, and I think our involvement is important in a lot of them. I do think we have an ownership issue. I mean, I'm particularly interested in gig economy. I do think we have a massive ownership issue here, and I think we need to think about it. And, like, I wonder if there's other industries we can learn from, because in the absence of there really being any clarity or it being very effective, I'm just thinking about, like, the construction, for example, that was in the past a big problem, and then the construction design management regs came in that placed really clear responsibilities along the supply chain for health and safety on everyone, and that really helped turn the dial. So is there something that we can do for the delivery industry that is similar, where we actually say, well, yes, because at the moment there seems to be like a disconnect and a clash between employment law with the classification and the health and safety law. So something needs to change, and it needs to be clarified in the law, I think, who is responsible for what and what should people do. And only then can you start really looking at regulating it properly. So yes, and then obviously there's other vehicles where I think we have a role to play, and I think having a standard like FORCE, or whatever, for example, is a positive thing, and to step in as a transport authority. What I was going to say also about sort of next steps, I think what would be really helpful maybe is this issue of systemic failure. It doesn't get picked up, but I'm not entirely sure people know exactly what is systemic failure or what constitutes systemic failure. So what actually are we looking at? And then to define that more clearly, and maybe that can be a collaborative effort, and then to help the police identify that, and then to pass it on to the regulator or to like the investigation branch or whatever, to then really like not look at these things just as a traffic accident, but to look at the underlying safety management issues around it. Because as long as that doesn't happen, nothing shifts, and as long as there's no regulator actually ever, the risk is much higher for a lot of people to get their business model overturned than it is to get prosecuted under health and safety law. That doesn't happen. So I think that something there needs to be redefined and needs to be sort of shift.
Okay.
Really.
Thank you. So I'm going to bring Nick in next, because I think your standard actually brings in about sort of learning from incidents that have happened and stuff. So do you want to sort of chuck a bit in there?
Yeah, sure. And it's good to already have heard about that standard in the session earlier. So BSI is the UK's national standards body. We're not part of government. We represent UK in the development of international standards as well. So represent UK industry and societal interested standards. So we publish ISO 39001, which was mentioned earlier. And I know there's people in the room that were involved in the development of that standard. I think when people think about standards, they often, certainly the standards that BSI develops, their mind perhaps goes to specifications, standards for testing, physical things for products and features and systems. And that's very true. That's not a bad place to start. If you look at the passive safety features that we have in our cars and vehicles, airbags, and even some of the more active safety features with ABS and electronic stability control, all of those features will be designed, manufactured and tested to standard. So I think there's an important role there that standards play. It's the same for our roads, thinking about safe systems and safer roads. Vehicle restraint systems will be designed, manufactured and tested to standards. I think there's something interesting happening, which is we've already talked about today, which is the technology in our vehicle is changing, and the standards will need to change as well. And we've talked a little bit around autonomy and automated systems, But that also applies to electrification, and bear in mind, current government targets means you won't be able to sell a petrol or diesel car in 2035 or an HGV in 2040. You know, we are looking now at HGVs in 20, 30 years' time, either being electric or hydrogen or another fuel, which brings a whole raft of other safety risks, actually. And we're doing lots of work there talking with HGV operators and OEMs about how you manage that out. So I think that's a good way to think about standards, but standards often also capture good practice in terms of policies, procedures, and that's where ISO 39001 comes in. I think one of the interesting things about that standard, it's over a decade old now actually, is that I feel maybe it was a little bit misunderstood at the time and seen as the ISO 9001 for road traffic safety, which it kind of is, but it was, I think an assumption was made that its target audience was transport operators and fleet owners and operators. But actually, going back to Heather's point, it should and can apply to anyone whose workforce uses vehicles, anyone, if it doesn't matter if it's a company car, if they take a car allowance, or if they don't do either of those things. It's there to make sure that staff are aware of the safety risks. It's really encouraging that top-down management buy-in, executive level buy-in around Vision Zero. So I think it's great to see the driving for business and the Openreach work, because I think they're very complementary with that standard. So I think in terms of what BSI will be hoping to do this year is, well, two things. One is that BSI, with our UK technical experts, is going to bid to take the secretariat of the ISO Technical Committee, so we can really try and drive that standard in a progressive direction going forward. So I think that's a UK leadership opportunity. And we also want to do a campaign out to wider businesses around the benefits of using that standard to encourage the right behaviours at the highest level within the business and through the business. The final thing I just wanted to say for the moment is, and it may be as uncomfortable in some ways to talk about this, but actually there's a commercial benefit for being safe. And if that's the thing that gets businesses moving, we shouldn't be afraid to talk about it. And some of the organisations that we know that have used 39001 have pointed to quite significant benefits in terms of lower insurance premiums, lower fuel costs, and lower inspection and maintenance costs as well. And I'd be interested if others have seen that with their own initiatives. So if safety isn't enough, and if the lives of your workforce aren't enough, and you can save significant money, then maybe that's the kind of the further push that's needed.
Okay, brilliant. I'm going to be Steve Gooding. You've got a lot of experience, Steve, in this field. I'm not saying you're old, but but you also know that it's not the easiest thing to do, and that you've probably been banging your head against the table for several years trying to get things to change. So how can we do it?
Well, I think just reflecting on the day and my own sense of it, I think what I would say is, let's think about this as a two-tier thing. So there's frequently we've run up against something I regard as a fact, which is the HSE is not about to throw itself at us willingly and saying, we'd love to do this, let's help you. Right? I've had a chat with people there before. By and large, that's not what they said. Right? For a whole variety of perfectly logical reasons. They don't have the staff, the capability, they don't think they have the knowledge. Doesn't mean it isn't the right answer. So what I would say is, if we think of this as a two-tier issue, let's not lose sight of what we think is the right answer, because there's no good reason why we shouldn't keep pressing for that. But at the same time, let's also turn our minds to, well, if that's not on offer at the moment, then surely something else can be done that's useful and productive. And the thing I would take out of this particular panel at the moment is that pressure that can be applied through a supply chain. Because we've heard a couple of examples of companies that do take this really seriously. I think Transport for London has long recognised its power as a procurer. National Highways has recognised its power as a procurer. I've heard a lot previously about the use of that through through the supply chain, for example, to achieve environmental standards and environmental benefits. Well, let's see that feeding through also into this. And I think that's a way that members of Driving for Better Business to not only put a spotlight on their own record, but actually force a bit more through the system. I wish I had a brilliant idea for tackling the problem that Heather raises with us about the self-employed person. I think of the chap who came to cut down a tree in our garden. I remember looking at him thinking, well, I wouldn't climb that ladder, let alone what on earth he was doing, how many hours he'd driven. I don't know how we can get at that. Maybe there are some other bright ideas here, which I guess would be the third thing, which is, let's not lose sight of the right answer. Let's think about things that can be done. Don't stop thinking, because any one of us could have a brilliant idea on the way home from here tonight.
But Steve, your chap who cuts down the tree and my scaffolder who puts up the scaffolding are people that are being forced to do that through HSE legislation. And whereas before the chap painting the house would have gone up his ladder and possibly fallen off the ladder, he now has to have the scaffolder come in, so he is safer. The scaffolder falls, but he doesn't. The painter doesn't, but the scaffolder falls. And in your case, the safety equipment and checks of the chap who cuts down the tree is absolutely amazing to see and to watch, and that's heavily regulated. And so, what about the vehicles they drive?
Yes.
That's why I say, let me have a look at your car. What are you driving today?
Can I just give a quick plug to Driving for Better Business? If you're not already signed up, it's a free thing to do. There was a sort of banner out there and stuff like that, so please do that. Kieren, now, I've got a question for you, which is, I'm not sure that the vehicles that we're offered are as safe as they should be, and that vehicle manufacturers, what I like about the idea of having AVs is that actually the ownership of the risk is now with the manufacturer and the AI company. Whereas at the moment, they sell you a vehicle and they're just like, bye, and they have no responsibility. So I would like to know if, can we sort of say, when you buy vehicles, does it help me meet my health and safety regulations? Does it meet PURE? I've had to read health and safety stuff. Can you imagine this? I shouldn't have to do that. Because I started reading through and I'm thinking, do you know what? And the example about the bus and stuff like that is that we're not buying vehicles that are fit for purpose. There was someone told me about, it was hands-free mobile phones, yeah? It comes as standard in the vehicle, in a van, and you can't get rid of it. So you might have a company policy that is we don't use hands-free mobile phone, but it's built in, so it's then really hard to know if they're using it or not. Whereas actually, you almost want to say, this is our specification. I don't want hands-free. I don't want a screen. I want buttons because we feel that it's. I know that's a big thing with you, Steve. And I think we should, as an industry, be driving what the manufacturers make for us, and sort of say, these are my risks. This is how people get hurt or hurt others. What does your vehicle do to do that? Rather than here's a tick list and do you want this extra and this extra and this extra? It's almost flipping it on its head and saying, these are my issues. What can you do to help that? And if you're not doing very well, I'm going to go to a different manufacturer that's going to perhaps do a bit more.
Okay, that's a really tough question. Thanks for that. Can I have an easy one? But no, so for us, I guess we need to challenge more, I guess. I'd like to see more safety features put in some of the vehicles we have, less in some of the others. I think I share your view with touchscreens. I hate them because actually you're trying to see what's going on. Oh, I can't find the heating button, I'm on a different one. So you can use voice recognition to hopefully do that. And obviously, for us, we use Apple everything, right? So we have Apple iPhones for engineers to use, and obviously then they want Apple CarPlay put into the vehicle, so we're trying to make it nice for them for that, so that they can listen to the radio. I'm like, can't we just give them a cassette player? It'd be a lot easier, because they can't touch it. But yeah, so I think we need to have more conversations with the vehicle manufacturers, but I think it's a collective thing for all of us to, because Openreach will have quite a bit of buying power, but we're not the only ones. They've got the post office in the room and Centrica and stuff like that, right? We've all got to combine and say, actually, this is what we want, because it's we won't get there on our own. We can try and be the front leaders, and our fleet team are very good at asking what they need and what they want. But we've got to design out the risk, and I think that's something we need to do.
So can I ask a question, Jamie? Because that strikes me, it leads back to the point you made there. You've got Driving for Better Business as an organisation. Companies are signed up. Could Driving for Better Business corral a bit of that impetus to get the companies to say, if it was left to us, this is what we would like our vehicles to be like, and maybe bring them together to create a voice that would have some impact on the vehicle design.
I think that's the sort of thing that I want to sort of come out of this, is that, you know, I'm going to try to set up a sort of work-related group to support sort of driving a better business. And it's that kind of thing. It's just like, you know, it's the tail wagging the dog. You know, it should be, you know, we've got, and it's sort of bringing people together. So we've got a certain amount of data. We know how people get killed or kill others and things like that. So we can sort of say, well, actually, you know, speed isn't a major issue. ISA isn't perfect, so is it a mixture of advisory ISA but with telematics, and sort of come up with a sort of checklist of this is what we think a commercial vehicle should have or not have. I'm gonna, you're very...
I'm just a bit, sorry. Richard Kieren again, sorry. I think it's a bit more nuanced than you described it, Jen. I think it's important to say that. I think we've got worldwide actually, but the motor industry, whether that's making trucks or cars or motorbikes, is pretty mature. It's not good for their business to make product that isn't safe. And for those of you who remember 2016 and the small Volkswagen issue that happened for emissions, and the projects we helped the department write on, since then, and this has been kept, because it was before the GSR bit that GB had kept, so we now have continuing monitoring. So what does that mean? It means this country's government, I can make a few phone calls, or we could, and we could go and buy a vehicle and we could see if it passes the safety standards, the emission standards, and the various things, and we could check it works. So you design a vehicle standards, you've got conformity of production, you can spot check. We have a perfectly good set of measures that we know what works, right? The beautiful thing about the general safety regulation, and I think I'm so proud of so much of it, but the bit I loved was getting over 100 different stakeholders, from NGOs, you guys, the industry, got everyone in a room, got all to agree the evidence. So before we started arguing about what to have, where and when, how much will this thing cost? Why? And how effective is it? Why? How confident are we about that? Very confident, not. What can be? Everyone agreed that. When we can agree that, we can then decide what to do. So we know a lot already about what works on vehicles and vehicle safety features. Kate mentioned a vehicle that pulls to the side because it sees a line. That's because it doesn't meet GSR. You're an MCAT 5-star, but if it met the GSR lane, it wouldn't do that. Wouldn't be allowed. Right? Interesting, yeah? But that nuance, do you see what I mean? And this is the problem we have, that we have this divergence. And you've got to be pretty specialist to know this stuff, and really geeky. Incredibly geeky to know what...
That's what we've got you here.
And it doesn't make good dinner conversation. So we've got to make it easy for people, and we've got to be careful with our stories. So, which is why I'm telling Jenny off a little bit. So, Jen, just because if we go to the assumption that the motor industry isn't.
Okay, I'm being mean on purpose because I want a reaction, and it's sort of picking up. just 1 second. So it's picking up a bit like what you've done with the bus sort of safety and the direct vision. It's sort of saying, well, rather than working at government level, it's saying actually if we work with industry level, yeah, will we get more done and quicker? Because whereas you're trying to get a government to sign up what they will do and what levels and stuff like that, at an industry level, with that, because these are the people that buy them.
Steve, I'm going to Stephen's point. You do it all, right? So if the right answer in this one is HSE, right, or whichever, go with a gold star, North Star, whatever it is you want, right? But we need to be doing more now. Now, the issue that most people will have if you're buying or managing a fleet of vehicles will be you won't know what right is. And it's a great suggestion that we could come together and try and make a business to absolutely fully support. So I think it's finding a way to make life easier for people to do the right things and accepting things change. Right? Because when touch screens came in, systems came in, everyone thought they were great. Most people. There's increasing evidence that the human is in the room still. There's increasing evidence that the human-machine interface and the way that these systems work or perhaps could be distracting. Might be as distracting as mine to change cassette tapes and reach over to the far side, right? Because now it's amplified, it's all voice activated. I don't have that cassette problem I used to have.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to learn, but the data's key, right? And we know a lot.
Should we take these last two because I'm conscious of the time?
Yes, yeah.
actually have made a procurement requirement. And then he also says, I need driving for better business. Yes, we can corral demand, and I wish I was there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, we set up RoadSafe 20 years ago to do that. We have achieved, not just RoadSafe, collectively, we have gone a long way, a massive distances in achievement. Some of it through customer demand, a lot of it through straightforward innovation and competition. And it's competition that has driven a lot of this. And that's what Euro NCAP does. It's created competition. It's good to have these things. One of our greatest achievements, I think, in RoadSafe has been setting up driving for better businesses in Europe. You're now asking to do things it was never suggested it should do. And I don't think it should take on that role, because it's there as advisory and support. The role you're suggesting is very important, and it's to get this thing going again, get the debate going again, get the manufacturers involved. The big challenge in trying to do that nationally is that nearly all the innovation in the motor industry comes from the tier ones. Most of that comes from across the world in teams working between one continent and another. Bosch India team is the most innovative of all. The testing of what they do is done in Sweden. Overnight, the data is sent back to India to be crunched. It's that kind, it's a massive industry. Now, an understanding of that is necessary to have taken dialogue forward. And yes, we can broker that. And I think we should. But it should be a collective effort. And it should be done to encourage competition and encourage involvement by industry, not by bashing them. And that won't work. And it certainly won't work in Britain. And the last point I make, it's got to be done in the context of the future, which is not about safety. The future is about social, about mobility. That's the context. We must do that. So coming up and saying safety is not it. Safety is a consequence of good management, and that's what driving for better business is all about.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take a couple more questions.
Just a specific suggestion on the back of that, because from a major procurer perspective, keeping your contracts open ultimately to everyone is quite important. And I think the thing that we have to consider here is how can we achieve a minimum safety standard for those vehicles and those policies without having adverse impact on all the companies basically that want to bid for our work. So the tier one, the big suppliers, and the small and medium enterprises, because the main concern there is we don't want to end up then creating an unfair advantage only to those companies that can afford it, if that makes sense. So making sure that we take into consideration the standards, the safety effect, the cost, and how we can make sure that that doesn't have any impact on our competition, as in for the tendering process, is quite important for all of us.
Yes, I think it comes back to the sort of some of the time stuff that TfL was talking about, that, you know, it's not just tomorrow. There is a bit of a sort of gap to let them to do that. So I think it's very important. Right, so one question at the back, and then I need to start wrapping up.
Yeah, this question has changed with various things. I think Adrian's absolutely right in that, you know, the UK, particularly post-Brexit, is not a particularly strong position to shout about stuff. I take on board, you know, some of the stuff that Richard said about the innovation that's come out of the motor industry from actually the three-point seatbelt kind of onwards. There's been a lot of safety stuff which hasn't been driven by regulation. But equally, going back 20 years, you couldn't buy a vehicle in the Middle East that had dual airbags and ABS because the manufacturer said there was no local demand for it. They were doing special runs at the factory that were making the stuff to export to GCC. The oil and gas industry got together and said, our new industry standard is we will only buy stuff that meets this specification. And pretty much overnight, Toyota were the first, and then the others kind of followed suit fairly rapidly. And oh, actually, you know, one company in Oman had 12,000 vehicles that they needed to replace, so instantly that was quite a nice motivator. And I think working multinationally, so PACTS doing stuff with companies in the UK, mirror that across ETSC, suddenly, and actually working with the motor industry, but to get those companies in them. And at the moment, it's very competition, it's very market driven. But actually, the market hasn't turned around and said, we don't want touch screens in our vans, thanks very much. There isn't a single unified voice from industry, and that's what the oil and gas industry managed to do. They managed to set a global recommended practice which said exactly what they wanted, and that they went to all their suppliers. And I think that's the kind of direction we should be going.
Yes. Any ideas of how we do that? I think that's what we need to sit down and have a think about. Yeah. Right. I will take one last question, and that's it.
Jamie, for those who don't know me, I'm Simon Turner. I'm the campaign manager for Driving for Better Business, and I'd just like to thank you all for the kind plugs that you gave me throughout the day. But the one thing that I wanted to offer a suggestion that we should focus a bit more on power of procurement, which a number of the panel have mentioned. I think it's probably one of the quickest ways to get businesses involved. We take TfL as an example with what they did with Force and DBS. Basically, you cannot drive into London. They've said you don't get to drive into London unless you meet these standards. And as a result, every commercial vehicle now has a Force sticker on the back. The work Tavid's been doing in the rail industry is about driving standards up. It's an expectation in the whole rail industry that if you want to work in the rail industry, that's what you do. With National Highways, it's written into the major projects contracts now that you must demonstrate good management of work-related road risk. And taking Heather's point about the scaffolding, I know major contractors where they've had, for instance, drug and alcohol policies which relate to every site that they operate. And that doesn't just mean their staff. So the result is that, for instance, at their head office, even the window cleaner who turns up in his own van as a self-employed contractor is subject to random drug and alcohol testing. So there's plenty of things that big, responsible employers can do to drive those expectations and those requirements down through their supply chain. And so I think that's possibly one of the quickest wins is to companies with influence to do that.
And sharing best practice. So, you know, sort of Kate's company and what they're doing and how it's worked and stuff like that. I mean, we shouldn't have to wait for other companies to, you know, suffer a serious loss of life to think, do you know what, we should be doing a bit more. I'm not going to take a question because I'm going to...
The question was just a statement of a bit of caution.
Yeah.
Businesses can do what is right, and it's right that we can drive the agenda on. We also need to be conscious of the trade unions and possibly have some impartial negotiation with those as well.
Yes.
Because we can set a policy of only procuring vans with dash cams. We might then find out we've got tens of thousands of people who refuse to drive them.
Yes, and it's sort of weird that actually when it comes to sort of work-related road safety, actually this is about keeping them safe. And part of that is making sure that they don't get caught using a mobile phone or speeding, because if they lose their license, it's really bad. If they kill someone, it's even worse. And it's sort of weird sometimes that the people that you think should be helping you push this along or demanding it are stopping it. And I think, and that's where hopefully we can help as well, sort of thing. To sort of
the impartiality, I think, would be a big advantage.
Yeah.
Because between company and trade union, it's often...
And they should be part of that discussion, because to be honest, it should be them that's saying, you know, hang on, people are dying at work, what are you doing? And it's trying to get that sort of everyone involved and, as we say, pushing in the same direction. Right, I'm over. I'm going to get told off. I just wanted to flag that you're not alone getting this, not doing as well as we could. So the police did a bit of a survey to find out who kills, what kills most police officers. And they were really surprised to find out it's road traffic collisions. And then it was 53% in the thing that they did. And of that 53%, 80% were during commuting. And I've just sent a FOI to the health secretary to say, how many doctors and nurses and health people have been killed in road traffic collisions? How many were working? How many were commuting? How many died on their own time? Because I don't know if you know, the MOD have done a road safety strategy. I almost want to challenge each department and saying, actually, this is probably one of the biggest killers of your staff, yeah? Be they working or not working, you know, directly. What are you doing? Because actually, if I can go to individual departments, I can then go to the government as a whole and saying, actually, you know, some of your departments now have road safety strategies. Wouldn't it be nice to have a national one? You know, it's a fun idea. So I just sort of mentioned that. Right, I've got a few thank yous to do. So thank you for coming in person. Thank you for the 50-odd online. I've got to thank National Highways because they sponsored this event. I've got to thank the Department of Transport. They are here online. Vicky was meant to be here, but something came up, so she couldn't make it. But they are here online. RAC Foundation, they've helped with the event and some of the costs. So there will be more work. I've probably covered about a third of what I wanted to cover. And as you see, we're already over time, and we've probably squashed too much into this, because it would have been really nice to have more of a discussion. But so I think we'll probably follow this up with perhaps another one, and we'll also sort of perhaps write a couple of things up and sort of share them out. And also this will be available online, so please share that out there. Am I meant to be thanking anyone else? Yeah, I just sort of thinking of sort of workforce, and we haven't really talked about sort of 5-star roads. We talked about 5-star vehicles, but actually, you know, I think you're heading towards having some sort of 5-star drivers, and I think that's really important. And recognising that. So it sounds like, you know, if you've got a 1-star driver, they don't work for you. And your 2-star drivers, you're like, well, unless you get to 3-star, you ain't working for us. And I think that's really powerful. And I sort of said, wouldn't it be nice to have it? Well, the general public is really hard to do that. But actually, in a workforce, it's easier to do. And you can actually sort of recognise and reward that. So I know a lot of the big companies self-insure. Yeah? So actually, having 5-star drivers saves you money. So actually, you can potentially reward better, you know, on that side sort of thing. So actually, you know, and it's a badge of honour. But, you know, there's probably another issue with trade unions and stuff like that. But
UPS, UPS, the delivery service,
yep.
had literally I showed a photo of it in my presentation.
Are there a circle of, yeah.
What it means is 25 years or 30 years of driving without any incident.
Marvellous. So, yeah, so again, I think it's sort of trying to find best practice and sharing it and seeing if it works and does it drive the right behaviour sort of thing. So thank you for all coming. We're wrapping up. You have to leave really quickly, otherwise I get told off now. Is that right?
Travel home safely.
Travel home safely, yes.